Hi guys, am I audible? If you're able to hear me, please type the chat box that you're able to hear me. Sorry for the delay. There was some teething troubles before I could start the session. Please give me a response if you're able to hear me. Am I audible, guys? Great. There was a bit of a delay in my chat as well. So I did not get your responses. Great. So let's start. Great. So as usual, the pattern for today is going to be, we will start with a quiz, which will go parallel to this. So that's going to be a live quiz. So how are we going to do the live quiz for reading comprehension? So how we are going to work it out is we'll be reading the passage together and only the question part will come as a live quiz. So as and when you answer, you will see how you have done with respect to your other competitors in this particular quiz. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. I'm going to start the live quiz. Those of you who are new to the session that we're doing, please look at the first link that you see in the description. Click that link. It will take you to a page where you'll be able to see the live quiz. So the live quiz will be named Reading Comprehension Live Quiz. Let me quickly check what exactly is the name. Yeah, XAT Reading Comprehension will be the name of the live quiz. XAT RC Live Quiz will be the name of the live quiz. Click the first link that you see in the description to go to the page to see the live quiz. And in case you're watching this video as a recorded video and you were not available in the live session, of course, you'll not be able to take the live quiz because it would have gone. You can still follow through the session because the questions will be flashing on the screen. You can follow through the whole thing. There should not be any problem in following through. Okay, now before we can start the actual quiz, so I'll have to quickly sum up the basic techniques required in solving reading comprehension. Now the techniques are pretty simple. I also have a very detailed session about these techniques. So some of our students of George Prep, there is an extremely detailed section about reading comprehension theory. And for those of you who are probably following me on YouTube, there is a playlist. I'll probably link it up at this point of time. You should be able to see it on the top regarding the theory behind solving reading comprehension. So I'm going to sum it up. There are two main points you should keep in mind. So one is you have to read actively. So what do you mean by reading actively? Means you try to make sense out of why a particular thing is being said, right? Try to follow through the flow of the passage. Don't just read sentence after sentence without connecting them. So connecting the sentences and trying to make sense out of why this is being said. Is this even making sense or not? Okay, so that is active reading. So getting involved with the passage. And then when it goes to the second stage, we will go through elimination. Means we will not right away jump to an answer because it looks like the right answer. We'll try to eliminate the options based on some problem with the options, and then we will finally arrive at the right answer. Okay, so that's the basic strategy we are going to follow today. Looks like very simple, but when we put it into practice, you will see that you can actually end up with extremely high accuracy. So what I'll be doing is I will actually be reading the passage and telling you what you should actually be thinking, because that's an extremely important part of reading comprehension. A lot of people tend to think that the initial reading is not all that important. It's actually the questions that is important. That's not the case. How well you read, it will have a direct impact on how quickly and how accurately you can solve the questions. So the reading is especially important in these kind of tricky RCs. XAT RCs are going to be pretty tricky. They are going to be inference based. So I'm going to read it. In fact, we will read together. I'm going to tell what I think when I read certain parts, like what I anticipate and so on. Then we'll go to the question part. I hope everybody is clear with the pattern that we're going to follow today. Please type C if you guys are following the pattern that we are going to follow in today's session. Perfect. I'm getting some responses here. Great. I think we can go ahead and look at the questions. Okay, so I'm going to start the first passage. The quiz is not yet up. Don't worry about it. We're going to read first and then we will start the quiz. Okay, so let's start reading the first one. Great. So let's give it a reading. One thing, as we are going to have a lot of text on the screen. So if you can push your clarity up to the streaming is happening in high definition. So you can push the clarity up to 1080p. I think at least 720p will be fine to read what is given, because it's going to be text. It's going to be a lot of text on your screen. So if you are at very low resolution, if you're streaming at low resolution, and if you're watching the video at low resolution, you won't be able to read the text very clearly. So make sure you at least take it up to 720p, or even 1080p is also fine. Okay, so in case you find problem in reading the text, that's what you're supposed to do. Okay, let's read this. This is going to be the first passage for today's discussion. Okay, so I'm going to read it and then we will go forward and look at the questions one by one. If history, okay, this came in XAT 2018, so it's a real XAT question. Let's go through it. If history doesn't follow any stable rules and if we cannot predict its future course, why study it? Kind of makes sense, right? If it doesn't follow any stable rules and if you cannot predict any future course with history, then why study it? It often seems that the chief aim of sciences is to predict the future. Meteorologists are expected to forecast whether tomorrow will bring rain or sunshine. Economists should know whether devaluing the currency will avert or precipitate an economic crisis. Okay, these are all examples he's giving for science is all about predicting the future, right? Okay, should know whether devaluing the currency will avert or precipitate an economic crisis. Good doctors foresee whether chemotherapy or radiation therapy will be more successful in curing lung cancer. So this is something you should keep in mind. When you're going through the examples, you can quickly rush through them because examples are not necessary. I got his point. He is trying to tell that science is to predict future, and he is just giving examples after examples. I can quickly rush through that part of the passage. Okay. Similarly, historians are asked to examine the actions of our ancestors so that we can repeat their wise decisions and avoid their mistakes. But it never works like that because the present is just too different from the past. It is a waste, should have been waste. It is a waste of time to study Hannibal's tactics in the Second Punic War so as to copy them in the Third World War. What worked well in cavalry battles will not necessarily be of much benefit in cyber warfare. Science is not just about predicting the future, though. Okay, so till now they were telling science is more about predicting the future. Suddenly they are telling science is not all about predicting the future, though. Then it is about what? Scholars in all fields often seek to broaden our horizons. Oh, so it's not just about predicting the future. It's also about knowing more than what you already know. Right? Broaden our horizons, thereby opening before us new and unknown futures. This is especially true of history. So history might not be very helpful in predicting future, but it might help you to broaden your horizon. Okay, that's the kind of turn the author is taking here. Thereby opening before us a new and unknown futures. This is especially true of history. Though historians occasionally try their hand at prophecy without notable success. Of course, they told that it's difficult for history to predict future. The study of history aims above all to make us aware of possibilities that we don't normally consider. Historians study the past not in order to repeat it, but in order to be liberated from it. Each and every one of us has been born into a given historical reality, ruled by particular norms and values and managed by a unique economic and political system. We take this reality for granted, thinking it is natural, inevitable, and immutable. We forget that our world was created by an accidental chain of events and that history shaped not only our technology, politics, and society, but also our thoughts, fears, and dreams. So it's more of an explanation on how history enables you to expand your horizon, how history makes you realize certain things. Okay. But also our thoughts, fears, and dreams. The cold hand of the past emerges from the grave of our ancestors, grips us by the neck, and directs our gaze towards a single future. We have felt that grip from the moment we were born, so we assume that it is a natural and inescapable part of who we are. Therefore, we seldom try to shake ourselves free and envision alternative futures. Studying history aims to loosen the grip of the past. Hence, you might be able to think about alternative futures. Right? It enables us to turn our head this way and that and begin to notice possibilities that our ancestors could not imagine or didn't want us to imagine. By observing the accidental chain of events that led us here, we realize how our very thoughts and dreams took shape, and we can begin to think and dream differently. So that's what history does, right? It helps us to think differently than what our ancestors would have wanted us to think. Studying history will not tell us what to choose, but at least it gives us more options. I enjoyed reading this passage. How many of you enjoyed reading this? It was kind of fun. Did you enjoy reading this? You can give a response in the chat box. Anybody enjoyed reading this? Type me if you enjoyed reading this. It's a take on history. Basically, they're trying to tell that you might not be able to predict the future from history, but history will expand your horizons. It will help you to look at alternative futures. It will give you more options. That's basically what they're trying to tell. Perfect. Now let's go to the quiz, guys. So there are 3 questions for this. We're going to answer the questions one by one, and there will be a timer going on here. You'll have to answer within the. Okay. So those of you who joined late, please click the first link that you see in the description, which takes you to our dashboard, where you will be able to see under upcoming live quizzes, there is a quiz named XAT RC's live quiz. So we're going to start off that quiz now. I'm going to start the first question in the quiz right now. I'm starting the first question, guys. The first question is up in the quiz, and I'm also activating the first question on the screen here. The time is up in the quiz, but I'm going to wait for the timer on the screen to come to 0. That will only happen for the first question. The second question onwards, the timer on the screen should be pretty much in sync with the timer that you see in the quiz. Okay, let's see the status of the leaderboard. after you guys have attempted the first question. We have Pranay on top, followed by a few people. Very good. Many of you have got it right. Let's see how we can solve this question. Read the following sentences. And what are we supposed to do? Which of the statements above, if true, would contradict the view of the author? So let's read the sentences and see which of them would, which all of them would contradict. First one, the historian successfully predicted a political crisis based on similar events of the last century. That's exactly what the author says is not the primary purpose of history, right? You might not be able to predict future based on history. But if a historian successfully predicted a political crisis based on similar events of the last century, he is predicting future by looking at history, which will definitely contradict the view of the author. So I should have 1 in my answer. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I should have 1 in my answer because it's definitely contradicting what the author is trying to tell. Because author says you cannot predict future from history, but a historian is doing it. Next, using the latest technology, doctors could decipher the microbe causing the disease. Okay, first of all, you're speaking about doctors, so we're speaking about science here, right? Decipher the microbe causing the disease. That's possible, right? Because science can look at history and predict what could be happening in the future. So that is not going to contradict what our author is saying. So that need not be part of our answer. Next, students who prepared for an examination by perusing the past 10 years question papers did not do well in the examination. Not surprising at all. That's what our author says. You cannot look at the past and predict the future. So if you went through past so many years question papers and if you did not do well in the examination, that's kind of in line with the author, right? You cannot look at history and predict the future. Okay, so that is in line with what the author is telling. And a tribe in Andaman learns to predict epidemic outbreaks by listening to the stories of how their ancestors predicted the past outbreaks. Well, what's happening here? They learn to predict epidemic outbreaks. They learn to predict means they're able to determine what could happen in the future by listening to the stories of how their ancestors predicted. So basically, they're able to predict what could happen in the future by looking at how things were in the history, which is definitely contradicting what the author says. So 1 and 4 should be there in my answer. Answer is option 4 for this question. Please type 4 if everybody is clear with why we are going with option 4 for this question. I'm just waiting for some responses so that I can move forward with confidence that you guys have understood what we're doing. Okay, before we go to the next question, as we have a good number of people live right now, please do like this video in case you're liking the way in which the session is going. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, do subscribe. We do a lot of live sessions. You'll start getting notifications for that. Perfect. Let's go to the next question, guys. I'm moving to the next question in the quiz. Please head to the quiz page. The second question is up in the quiz. It's also up on the screen here. Anybody who is joining the session late, please click the first link that you see in the description to go to the quiz page. We are at the second question right now. And if you're watching the recorded version of this, I will give you a link to download these PDFs so that you can parallelly do the session. So right now, you will be able to see in the description, I will be uploading those PDFs. I haven't uploaded yet, but I'll be uploading those PDFs in the description of this video if you want to parallelly do it, if you're going to the recording, because you won't be having access to the live quiz at that point of time. Let's see what is the status of the leaderboard. After you guys have attempted this one, second question. Still Pranay on top, and there's a bit of change here. Very good number of you have got this question right. Let's see how to approach this one. Which of the following options is the closest to the essence of the passage? History, unlike physics, does not help predict future. Fine, it is consistent. It is in line with what is given in the passage. I'm going to keep it aside. History deals with long time periods. That's not what the passage is trying to tell. You can get rid of that. History documents the past events related to specific people. You can get rid of that as well. There is no strict cause and effect relationship in history. There is no strict cause and relationship effect in history. There might be maybe one or two. You cannot say no. See, no is a very strong word to use. No is a very strong word to use. There might be one or two cause-effect relationships as well, and that is not the primary focus of the passage. History has the potential to make us eclectic. Eclectic means what? If I have an eclectic collection, I have a collection of many varieties, right? History has the potential to make us eclectic, and that's what has happened towards the second half of the passage. Okay, so the structure was like this. It started with history cannot predict future perfectly. Like history cannot be used for predicting future. That was the first half of the passage, and they compared it with science to say that science is more about predicting future, but history is not about that. Situations change, so you cannot predict all that. That's the first half. And when you come to the second half, so history is not about what is given in the first half, then history is about what is given in the second half. So the second half was history is more about expanding your horizons, means knowing more than what you already know. And towards that, it also says studying history will not tell us what to choose, but at least it will give us more options. So you get more options when you study history. You get to know about various futures that are possible when you study history. So these are the two parts, right? So if I look at the fifth option, that is more about the second part of the passage, right? So history has the potential to make us eclectic, means history is about expanding horizons, more options, and so on. So which of these two should I go for? Should I go for the first one or should I go for the fifth one? Because both of them are consistent with what is given in the passage. But if you look at it, they're asking for the essence of the passage. So the passage's structure is more like this. History is not about this, it is about that. So if someone stops at history is not about this and then leaves it there, it becomes an incomplete passage, right? So the main purpose of the passage is to tell history is about what? So the main point here is the second half of the passage. Okay, that is the main essence. So history is not about this, it is more about this. So the main essence here is lying here, and the best answer we have is history has the potential to make us eclectic. First one, although consistent, the passage is not the essence of the passage. Please type 5 if everybody is clear with why we are going with option 5 for this question. Those of you who are there in the live session. I'm looking for some responses from people who are there in the live session. Great. Let's move forward. to the next question, which is the last question for this passage. I'm going to the next question in the quiz. The next question is up in the quiz. It is also up on the screen here. If you're watching a recorded version, please download PDF links, which I'll be uploading in the description, to scroll up and down, because you don't see the entire passage on the screen here. So you might have to scroll up and down sometimes. In that case, you might have to download the PDF and then parallelly do it. If you're there in the live session, please head to the live quiz page. You can take it as a proper quiz to see how well you're performing. People in the live session, head to the first link in the description. Okay, the time is up. Let's see what is the status of the leaderboard after you guys have attempted this question. Good, I could see good number of you getting this question right. Let's see how we can approach this one. Based on the passage, which of the following options would be the most appropriate for citizens to learn history? Citizens to learn history. Okay, let's look at them. Names of Indian states should be based on suggestions generated through an opinion poll. Why opinion poll here? Why should you have street names based on opinion poll? Where does this opinion poll part comes here? That's nowhere related to what we have been reading so far about history. So that's out. Names of Indian states should be periodically changed. Why should they be changed? The passage doesn't say anything about things should be changed constantly or something like that, right? So it should be periodically changed. No reason why it should be changed. Every state in India should display a plaque that lists all its previous names. Well, so if you are going to give list of previous names of the streets, that is clearly depicting the history of what's happening. Based on that, whatever options you want to have, because the passage is speaking about having more options, and that's what history is all about, right? So whatever options you want to have, you can have your options just by looking at the different names that are there. So that's just presenting you the history and then leaving you to do whatever you want to do with it. Looks like this could be our answer. British names of states in India should not be changed. See, should be changed, should not be changed. Nothing of that kind is given in the passage for us. So should be changed, should not be changed. All these things can be out. British names of streets in India should be changed. There itself I would eliminate it. To Indian names along with the explanation of their history. The second part seems to be fine. Along with the explanation of their history and all is okay. But why is the first part saying that British names should be changed? Why should it be changed? There's no reason which you can have from the passage, right? From passage, you won't be able to get any reason as to why the names should be changed or why the current state should be changed. No reason for that. So the best answer we can find here is option 3, which says every state in India should display a plaque that lists all its previous names. Means just present history. From there, people will figure out what options they have. Okay. So the best answer we have is option 3 for this question. Type 3 if you're clear with why we are going with option 3 for this question. Looking for some responses from people who are there in the live session. Great. So now let's move to the next passage. So this is the first passage we had. It came in XAT 2018. And those of you who are joining us just now, I'll tell you what we are actually doing. We are doing a live quiz and a live discussion. So there is a live quiz which happens parallelly. The first link in the description will take you to the live quiz page. So we read the passage together and then we attempt the question as a quiz. And that's the format we are following right now. So in case you are joining in late, that's what we're doing. And if you're watching the recorded version of this, I would have uploaded the links to download the PDFs for the RC so that you can have the PDFs open and parallelly follow up with the video. Now we are moving to the next RC for today's discussion. Okay, so this is the second RC for today's discussion. As usual, first we will read together. I'm going to read it. I'm probably going to speak out what goes in my mind when I read that, what I anticipate, what I think about the reasoning and so on. Because active reading is extremely important. How you read will have a direct impact on how quickly and how well you're able to answer the questions. So I'm going to read it together. So we are basically going to do the common reading, and then for questions, we will go to the quiz. Okay, so let's give this one a reading. Does having a mood disorder make you more creative? Having a mood disorder make you more creative? That's the most frequent question I hear about the relationship. What relationship? Mood disorder, creativity, that relationship. But because we cannot control the instance of a mood disorder, that is, we can't turn it on and off and measure that person's creativity under both conditions. Of course, you cannot do it like a proper science experiment. The question should really be, do individuals with a mood disorder exhibit greater creativity than those without? So that's a question we can look at. Studies that attempt to answer this question by comparing the creativity of individuals with the... Just give me a minute, let me quickly cross-check whether this is our second passage or the third passage. Second passage. Okay. So studies that attempt to answer this question by comparing the creativity of individuals with the mood disorder against those without have been, well, mixed. So studies will try to establish this, comparing what? Creativity of individuals and mood disorder. The results have been kind of mixed, means we are not able to get a clear result there, right, as to what is the relationship between these two things. Studies that ask participants to complete surveys of creative personality, behavior or accomplishment, or to compare divergent thinking measures where they are asked to generate lots of ideas, often find that individuals with mood disorders do not differ from those without. So when you do study, like handing out questionnaire for people to fill to find out how creative they are and all that, now it doesn't give you much of a difference between people with mood disorders and people without mood disorders. With mood disorders do not differ from those without. However, okay, so there is a turning point. So there is going to be something which is going to show the difference between these. Let's look forward to what that could be. However, studies using creative occupation as an indicator of creativity based on the assumption that those employed in those occupations are relatively more creative than others have found that people with bipolar disorders are overrepresented in these occupations. Okay, so when you look at creative occupation and kind of make an assumption that those occupations require people to be more creative, they are able to find that people with bipolar disorders are more represented in these occupations. These studies do not measure the creativity of participants directly. Rather, they use external records such as census and medical registries to tally the number of people with a history of mood disorders compared to those without, who report being employed in a creative occupation at some time. These studies incorporate an enormous number of people and provide solid evidence that people who have sought treatment for mood disorders are engaged in creative occupations to a greater extent than those who have not. So this is giving some kind of a pattern. Let me just scroll a little. Okay, so what kind of a pattern are we getting here? It says these studies incorporate an enormous number of people. So it's on a large sample space, so you can probably rely on the result, and provide solid evidence that people who have sought treatment for mood disorders are engaged in creative occupations to a greater extent. So people who have sought help for mood disorders are engaged in creative occupations to a greater extent than those who have not. But can creative occupations serve as a property? That's exactly what was going in my mind. Just because they are there in creative occupation, can we say they are better at creativity? That's what the question is here. But can creative occupation serve as a proxy for creative ability? The creative occupations considered in these studies are overwhelmingly in the arts. Because arts only you can have more of creative things, right? Which frequently provide greater autonomy and less rigid structure than the average 9 to 5 job. This makes these jobs more conducive to the success of individuals who struggle with performance consistency as a result of mood disorder. Kind of makes sense. The American psychiatrist Arnold Ludwig has suggested that the level of emotional expressiveness required to be successful in various occupations creates an occupational drift, and demonstrated that the pattern of expressive occupations being associated with a greater incidence of psychopathology is a self-repeating pattern. Okay, the level of emotional expressiveness required in a particular job kind of decides what kind of people come to that kind of job, and this guy is able to see some kind of correlation. There is a pattern of expressive occupations being associated with a greater incidence of psychopathology. So if the occupation requires more expressiveness, then there is greater incidence of psychopathology in those kind of occupations. For example, professions in the creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology, because creative arts would mean more expression, right? Professions in the creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in the sciences. Whereas within creative art professions, architects exhibit a lower lifetime prevalence rate of psychopathology than visual arts. So within creative arts, if you see, architects exhibit lower than people who do visual arts. And within visual arts, abstract artists exhibit lower rates of psychopathology than expressive art. Okay, they have given like a tree structure, they have divided and said what kind of people exhibit lower and higher rates of psychopathology. Therefore, it is possible that many people who suffer from mood disorders gravitate towards these type of professions regardless of creative ability or inclination. So it says that certain professions have certain kind of demands, and those demands kind of pull people with certain kind of disorders towards those kind of occupations. Okay, that's what is given in the last paragraph. Great. Now we are going to solve the questions on the basis of this. So those of you who are joining late, please click the first link in the description. I'm going to go to the first question in the quiz for this particular RC. Okay, the first question is up in the quiz. I'm also bringing the first question up here on the screen. I think this is a pretty easy one. I'm waiting for people to finish. Once the timer runs out, we will start discussing. Great. Looks like the time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard at the end of your attempts on this question. Good. Let's see how we can approach this. Looks like a pretty easy one. Which of the following will make the author's contention in the passage fallacious? Fallacious means what? False. Patients in mental asylums prefer time-bound repetitive jobs. Okay, we have it here. It is given the creative occupations considered in these studies are overwhelmingly in the arts, which frequently provide greater autonomy and less rigid structure than the average 9 to 5 job. So it says, just a minute, guys. Okay, so here if you see, it says that the creative occupations considered in these studies are overwhelmingly in arts, which frequently provides greater autonomy and less rigid structure than the average 9 to 5 job. This makes these jobs more conducive to success of individuals who struggle with performance consistency as a result of mood disorder, which means people with mood disorder or some kind of problems related to that should not prefer jobs which are average 9 to 5 jobs. Okay, that's what we can infer from this part. And if you come here, it is given patients in mental asylum prefer time-bound repetitive jobs. That will definitely make sure that the author's contention is fallacious. So this should be the answer because this kind of violates what the author is putting out here. Let's look at the other options. Everyone in the mental asylum is potentially a great artist. That only tells that there could be some kind of a correlation between people who have psychopathological problems and art. So that will kind of buttress what the author is telling, kind of support. So we cannot say that's going to contend with, it's going to make the author's contention fallacious. Creative geniuses never end up in mental asylum. It doesn't say that creative geniuses should always end up in mental asylum or something like that. Even if they don't end up in mental asylum, there could be some people who have that kind of problem, who can have creativity. They might not end up with as geniuses, but they could still have creativity. So this doesn't make the author's contentions fallacious. Those with a creative spark will end up in mental asylum. Okay, then that only kind of tells that the correlation between people who have mentally related problems might have creative abilities. That will not make his contention fallacious. Creativity is a form of bipolar disorder. It's nowhere related to what the author is telling. Creativity is not a form of bipolar disorder. They're telling there is some kind of correlation. So you can get rid of that. The best option we have is option 1. If patients in mental asylum prefer time-bound repetitive jobs, then that kind of falsifies or it kind of weakens what the author is trying to put out somewhere here in the second paragraph. So the best answer we have is option 1 for this question. Type 1 if you're clear with why we're going with option 1 for this question. Okay, let's move to the next question. I'm going to the next question in the quiz. The next question is up in the quiz. It's also up on the screen here. Okay, the time is up. Let's see what is the status of the leaderboard for this question. Good. Let's see how we can approach this one. All of the following can be inferred from the passage except which one? In creative professions, people with mood disorder are more creative than those without mood disorder. Okay, in creative professions, people with mood disorder are more creative than people without mood disorder. Is this given anywhere? That within creative professions, if you have a mood disorder, you're going to be more creative than people, or is anything related to that given somewhere? Within creative profession, if you have mood disorder, you might end up becoming more creative than people who don't have mood disorder. Is there anything related to that given? Am I audible, guys? I'm not getting responses. So am I audible? Okay. So, and we are looking for all of the following can be inferred from the passage except. So looks like this could turn out to be the answer. Let's look at the other ones. Individuals with mood disorder often do better in creative profiles than in a regular 9-to-5 jobs. That was given around here, right? This makes these jobs more conducive to success of individuals who struggle with performance consistency as a result of mood disorder. That's why more of them go to that kind of job and not to a regular 9-to-5 job. So this is something you can infer. We are looking at which of the following cannot be inferred basically, because that's what the question is asking. All of the following can be inferred from the passage except which one? So this can be inferred. Second one can be inferred. So that's out. Mood disorder is more prevalent among people in creative occupations than in non-creative occupations. Mood disorder is more prevalent among people in creative occupations than in non-creative occupations. Now, if you look at this part, it is given here. For examples, let's see here. Professions in the creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in science. If you read this part, professions in creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in sciences. Mood disorder is more prevalent among people in creative occupations, which is arts, right, than in non-creative occupations. You can infer that from here. So we are looking at except, so that also cannot be the answer. An abstract painter is less likely to have mood disorder than an interpretive dance performer. Okay, some kind of differences were given here. Let's see here. Abstract artists exhibit lower rates of psychopathology than expressive artists. Definitely an interpretive dance performer is an expressive artist, right? And it is given abstract artists exhibit lower rates of psychopathology. An abstract painter is less likely to have mood disorders. Definitely can be inferred from this part, the abstract artist part. So let me just underline this one. From here, sorry, not the architect part, the abstract artist part. The one related to fourth option is here. Abstract artists exhibit lower rates of psychopathology than expressive artists. Okay, next one. An architect is more likely to have mood disorders, than a botanist. For that, you can come back to what I have underlined here itself. It is given professions in the creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in the sciences, because botanist is definitely a science person, right? And an architect, as per what is given here, is definitely an arts related person, right? So professions in creative arts, so architect would come under that. Now, how do we know it comes under that? Because if you see here within creative arts profession, architects exhibit. So definitely architects is part of creative arts, right? So professions in the creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in sciences. So architect is definitely a profession in creative arts. It will be more likely to have mood disorders than botanist, who's a science person. So that also can be inferred. So the best answer we have is option 1 for this question. Type 1 if you're clear with why we are going to option 1 for this question. I think there is a bit of a lag, so I'm not getting your responses quickly, but I'll just wait for your response. It shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 seconds. Perfect. Just a reminder, in case you haven't liked the video, and if you're actually liking the way the session is going, please consider liking the video. Helps us to reach more people. And if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe to our channel to get updates on the sessions that we're doing. Okay, someone's asking me, sir, can you explain why not 4 once? Let's look at 4. See, please do ask doubts, guys. You don't have to just, I mean, if you are completely clear with it, I am happy. But if there is any kind of reservation that you have on the right answer, please do put across. That's the whole point of doing the live session. Otherwise, I could have just made a recording and uploaded it. Right? The whole point of doing the live session is to make sure that if you have a problem, you can stop me and get it clarified. That could also be a doubt for a lot of other people. So don't shy away from asking me to explain something once again. So now let's look at 4 as to why 4 could not be the answer. First thing is, we'll have to understand what the question is asking us to do. All of the following can be inferred from the passage except. So I could probably think of the question as, which of the following cannot be inferred from the passage. So we are supposed to find out one option which cannot be inferred from the passage. So if it can be inferred from the passage, that will not be our answer. Anything that can be inferred from the passage will not be our answer. Now we are looking at option 4. Someone wants me to explain option 4. Let's look at it. Okay, let me first clear off all those things that I have drawn here so that I can take you to exactly what is required for option 4. Okay, let's look at option 4. It says an abstract painter is less likely to have mood disorder than an interpretive dance performer. Okay, they did say something about abstract artists. That's towards here. Abstract artists exhibit lower rates of psychopathology than expressive artists. So abstract painter is definitely an abstract artist, right? No doubt about it. Is less likely to have mood disorder than interpretive dance performer. This is an expressive artist. Interpretive dance performer is an expressive artist. Okay, so it is given abstract artists exhibit lower rates of psychopathology. Abstract painter, who is an abstract artist, is less likely to have mood disorders, which is basically psychopathology in our context, right? Is less likely to have mood disorders than an interpretive dance performer, which can be inferred from what is underlined here. Is that clear? I hope that's clear for everybody. Let's move to the next question, which is in fact the last question for this passage that we are doing right now. Okay, I'm going to the next question for this passage in the quiz. So you can head over to the quiz page if you're there in the live session. The next question is up in the quiz, and it's also up on the screen here. Okay, the time is up. Let us see the status of the leaderboard at the end of this. Good. Let's see how we can approach this question. Go through the following. Mood disorders do not, okay, and do what finally? Which of the following would undermine the passage's main argument? Undermine means what? Remember, there's a lot of noise. Yeah, undermine means what? Weaken. So which of the following would weaken the passage's main argument? Let's see. Mood disorders do not lead to creativity. Okay, first of all, does the passage say that mood disorders lead to creativity? What do you think? Yes or no? Does the passage say mood disorders lead? Means mood disorders is like the cause which will result in the effect of creativity. Is there a cause-effect relationship? Okay, then what kind of relationship are we looking at? If not cause-effect, what kind of relationship are we looking at? There is some kind of a correlation. Correlation is different from causation, right? There is some kind of correlation. There is some kind of correlation with respect to people having mood disorders and they are being employed in creative occupations, right? So mood disorders do not lead to creativity is not going to undermine what the author is arguing, because the author is not arguing that mood disorders will lead to creativity. He is saying mood disorders will have, people with mood disorders will have certain kind of preferences and so on, which will finally land them in creative occupations. So one is not going to undermine the main argument that the author is making. So this is not part of our answer. Next, the flexibility of creative occupations makes them more appealing to people with mood disorders. That will in fact support, right? That's what is given here. This part of the passage says that people don't want, people with mood disorders would not like to go for a strict 9 to 5 kind of a job. So flexibility of creative occupations makes them more appealing to people with mood disorders, will not undermine. It will in fact end up supporting what the author is telling. Let's look at the third one. Mood swings in creative professions is less prevalent than in non-creative professions. Mood swings is less prevalent. Mood swings in creative professions is less prevalent than in non-creative professions. Now, if that is the case, then that can undermine, because what we're trying to see is, if you look at this part, let's look at this. Professions in the creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in sciences. Till here. Professions in creative arts are associated with greater psychopathology than professions in sciences. On the basis of that, our author is making certain argument. And if this says that mood swings in creative professions is less prevalent, but here it is given greater psychopathology, there you will have a problem. So if 3 were to be true, then these premises will go for a 6. That will start undermining our author's argument. So mood swings in creative professions less prevalent than in non-creative professions will have a problem. So the only one that is going to undermine of these 3 is statement 3. So answer is option 2, which says statement 3 only is going to undermine the author's argument. Please type 2 if everybody is clear with why we are going with 3 only for this question. Perfect. Let's move forward to the last passage for today's discussion. It's going to be slightly long. It might be tricky as well. Let's see how many of you can do well in that. This came in XAT 2017. As usual, I'm going to read this. So we'll read together and then we will go to the quiz to attempt the questions one by one. So let's give it a reading first of all. It has taken me 60 years, but I had an epiphany recently. Means sudden realization. That's what is epiphany, right? Epiphany recently. What is an epiphany? Everything, without exception, requires additional energy and order to maintain itself. Everything without exception requires additional energy to maintain itself. Okay, I knew this in the abstract as the famous second law of thermodynamics, which states that everything is falling apart slowly. This realization is not just the lament of a person getting older. Long ago, I learned that even the most inanimate things we know of, stone, iron columns, copper pipes, gravel roads, a piece of paper, won't last very long without attention and fixing and the loan of additional order. It should have been load of additional order. Existence, it seems, is chiefly maintenance. Okay, I got the sense of what he's trying to drive through in the first passage. To maintain things, for things to even exist as they are, they have to be maintained. It's not just to do with living things, it's also to do with inanimate things. Okay, let's go forward and see. Okay, at this stage, how many of you are interested in the way the passage is going forward? Or how many of you think that I think this is going to be interesting? Like me, if you're getting a sense that this could be interesting. Is anyone who thinks that I think the way it goes, the passage could be interesting? Yeah. So once you try to get a sense of the passage, in the first paragraph itself, you'll get an idea as to where this could lead. It could obviously change from your prediction, but it will give you a sense of where this would lead. If you can develop an interest in it, that's one of the primary reasons why people tend to do exceedingly well in reading comprehension. They tend to develop an interest in the passage. They don't think of it as an obligation to read. They think of it as, okay, something really fun is going to be there. Let me see what it is. Something new is going to come up. Let me see what it is. That inquisitiveness will also increase your comprehension levels. Okay, so I'm excited to see what it is going to offer. Let's see. What has surprised me recently is how unstable even the intangible is. Yeah, we spoke about rock and all that, right? Keeping a website or a software program afloat is like keeping a yacht afloat. It is a black hole for attention. I can understand why a mechanical device like a pump would break down after a while. Moisture rusts metal, or the air oxidizes membranes, or lubricants evaporate, all of which require repair. But I wasn't thinking that the non-material world of bits would also degrade. What's to break? Apparently everything. So he is telling even computer programs which cannot erode or have some kind of problems that generally physical things have, even they require maintenance. Brand new computers will ossify, weaken with use, code corrodes, fresh software just released will immediately begin to fray. On their own, nothing you did. It will just happen on your own. You don't have to do anything. The more complex the gear, the more, not less, attention it will require. The natural inclination towards change is inescapable, even for the most abstract entities we know of, bits, which is something to do with softwares and all that, right? And then there is the assault of the changing digital landscape. When everything around you is upgrading, it should have been it, I think. It puts pressure on your digital system and necessitates maintenance. You may not want to upgrade, but you must because everyone else is. It's an upgrade arms race. Even if you don't want to upgrade, you have to upgrade. That's what he is trying to tell here. Okay, I used to upgrade my gear begrudgingly. Means what? Don't want to do, but I still have to do. That is what is doing something begrudgingly. I don't want to do it, but then I have to do it. There is no other go. Okay, I used to upgrade my gear begrudgingly. Why upgrade it if it still works? And at the last possible moment, you know how it goes. Upgrade this and suddenly you need to upgrade that, which triggers upgrades everywhere. I would put it off for years because I had the experience of one tiny upgrade of a minor pan disrupting my entire working life. But as our personal technology is becoming more complex, more codependent upon peripherals, more like a living ecosystem, delaying upgrading is even more disruptive. If you neglect ongoing minor upgrades, the change backs up so much that the eventual big upgrade reaches traumatic proportions. So I now see upgrading a type of hygiene. You do it regularly to keep your tech healthy. Continual upgrades are so critical for technological systems that they are now automatic for the major personal computer operating systems and some software apps. Behind the scenes, the machines will upgrade themselves, slowly changing their features over time. This happens gradually, so we don't notice they are becoming. So we don't really notice that they're actually changing. That's what is becoming referring to here. They're actually changing, but we don't really notice because it all happens in the background for a lot of them. We take this evolution as normal. Technological life. Okay, I think there is a spelling mistake here. Technological life will be a series of endless upgrades, and the rate of graduation is accelerating. Means the rate at which things are changing is accelerating. Features shift, defaults disappear, menus morph. I'll open up a software package you don't use every day, expecting certain choices, and the whole menu would have disappeared. No matter how long you have been using a tool, endless upgrades make you into a newbie. The new user often seen as clueless. In this era of becoming, it's already given here if you remember. In this era of becoming, everyone becomes a newbie. Worse, we will be newbies forever. That should help us. I mean, that should keep us humble. Means you don't get to become a master because things change so quickly. You will always remain a newbie because a new thing has come up. That bears repeating. All of us, every one of us, will be endless newbies in the future, simply trying to keep up. Here's why. First, most of the important technologies that will dominate it like 30 years from now have not yet been invented. So naturally, you'll be a newbie to them. Second, because a new technology requires endless upgrades, you will remain in the newbie state. Third, because of cycles of obsolescence and accelerating, the average lifespan of a phone app is mere 30 days. Okay, because of the cycle of obsolescence and accelerating, you won't have time to master anything before it is displaced. So you will remain in the newbie mode forever. Endless newbie is a new default for everyone, no matter your age or experience. Wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this, a different take on how things change, especially initially it started with it's going to be more of a general article, but later it turned out into some kind of a technology based article, right? Like how tech things change, how physical things related to tech change, computers change, software change, code changes and all that. Great. Let's look at the questions for this. I'm going to go to the quiz and activate the first question for this particular passage. In case you are joining late, there is a link in the first link in the description. Click that, it takes you to the live quiz page. You'll be able to see a live quiz called XAT RC live quiz. Click on that. We are there at the we are going to move to the 7th question now. And if you're watching this as a recorded session, I will be giving links to download the PDFs for these. You can just download them and parallelly use them for scrolling up and down to refer before you can answer the question. Great. So I'm going to go to the next question in the quiz. The next question is up in the quiz. I'm also bringing up the next question here on the screen, which is the first question for this passage. Okay, the time is up. Let's see the status of the leaderboard after you guys have attempted this question. Great, let's see how we can approach this one. The CEO of a technology company was thinking of the following policies. If a CEO were to consult the author of the passage, which of the above policies will the author recommend? Let's see. Lifetime employment, definitely he will not recommend. That's more like if something fits you at one point of time, that will continue to fit you forever. That's exactly opposite of what the author is trying to tell. What fits you today might not fit you later. So you need not employ someone for lifetime because he is fitting you for that point of time. So one is out. 2, promotion based on seniority. So that's more like anything that remains for a longer duration will turn out to be better. No, right? Something that has existed in the past and served you well might not serve you well. Might not serve you well now, or it might not serve you well in the future. That's the line of thought that the author is trying to present. So promotion based on seniority, just because something has remained there for a long time doesn't mean it's going to serve you well in the future. So promotion based on seniority, out. Author would not suggest that. Hire new competent employees and fire old incompetent employees. Exactly what the author is trying to tell. Things tend to change, so you might have to upgrade, right? Things which you were finding useful in the past might not remain useful at this point of time, or might not remain useful for the future. So accordingly, you might have to upgrade things. So obviously, fire old incompetent, hire a new competent, definitely something that the author would recommend. Regular training and retraining, yes, you have to constantly upgrade yourself, continually upgrade yourself is what the author said. So this is also something the author will recommend. So the ones that the author will recommend will be 3 and 4, or 3 or 4. That's the best we have here. So 3 or 4 is the best answer we have for this question. Please type 2 if you're clear with why we're going for 3 or 4 for this question. Perfect. Let's move to the next question in the quiz. I'm moving to the next question in the quiz. And the next question is up on the screen here as well. Okay, the time is up. Let's see what is the status of the leaderboard at the end of this question. Great, let's see how we can approach this one. Which of the following quotes would the author agree with the most? If you do not change, you will be changed. I don't think he will agree with this. If you do not change, you will be changed. Where did he say? If you don't change something, you will be changed. It's not given anywhere. And nothing of that sort is given anywhere. You can get rid of that. Life is like riding a bicycle. In order to avoid falling, you must keep moving. That's definitely something is said, right? So you have to keep changing things because things around you are changing. So to keep up with that, you have to keep changing. So I think he will agree with this. The only thing constant in life is change. Okay, I'm going to keep that aside as well. We will come to 2 and 3. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. Outright, out of scope. What we can't cure, we must endure. We can't cure, we must endure. So it's more like, okay, if I were to put it in our author's technology perspective, it's more like this. If you can't change an old laptop, let's say if you can't change an old laptop, which takes, let's say, 1 hour to copy a 1 GB file, just sit there and watch the beauty of copying. Right? It's like that. What you can't cure, you must endure. You need not endure. The author says if you can't, I mean, if things are not working out, you got to change them. He doesn't say you have to just sit and go through with it. Okay, so you can get rid of that one. That's pretty funny actually. So we can look at option 2 and option 3, right? One of these should be our answer. Now let's see which of these will come out as the best answer. Option 3 says the only thing constant is the change. The author definitely spoke about change. He definitely spoke about things changing, but he did not stop there. He said the things are going to change, hence you also have to upgrade yourself to keep up with the change. So it doesn't stop at just telling that change is constant. He goes on to say that you got to upgrade yourself to make sure that you keep up with things. So that way, if you see, the best answer is 2 and not 3, because that says life is like riding a bicycle. In order to avoid falling, you must keep moving. So you must keep changing yourself because things around you are going to change. So you got to upgrade things to make sure you keep up with the change. Okay. So 2 and 3 are very close, but 2 is a better answer because 3 stops at things are going to change. But author doesn't stop there. He tells things are going to change, hence you also have to change, upgrade, and keep up with them. So is everyone clear why we are going with option 2 and not option 3? They are definitely close. But is everyone clear now why we are going with option 2? Okay, let's look at option 1. Someone wants me to explain option 1 once again. If you do not change, you will be changed. What do you mean by you will be changed? If you do not change, you will be changed. It's not given anywhere that if you do not change something, you will be changed. How is it given? I mean, it's not given that you will be changed. If you do not change, you will become redundant or something like that. It's still fine. Or you will become obsolete for the rest of the world. It's fine. You will be changed. How will you be changed if you do not change? It's like, let's say you have a laptop or a software program. If you don't change it, probably it will change by itself. I'm not able to relate how that is going to tell what the author is telling. If you do not change, you will be changed. This you will be changed part is what creates a problem here. Right? If you do not change, you will be changed is not something that the author will support. Is that clear why we are not going for 1? You will be changed part is the problem. Perfect. Let's go to the last question of today's discussion, guys. I'm going to move to the next question, which is also the last question for today's discussion. The last question is up in the quiz. I'm also going to activate it here on the screen. Okay, let me quickly see what exactly should be the fifth option. Okay, you can for now ignore the fifth option. Just ignore the fifth option for now. There is some spelling mistake here. Anyway, it's not the right answer. Let's look at the question. Let's see what is the status of the leaderboard. Perfect. Congrats to everyone who came on the leaderboard in today's session. Well done, guys. Let's see how we can approach this one. So for now, just get rid of the fifth option. There is some kind of a spelling mistake here, so I'm going to get rid of that right away. Let's look at the four options. Which of the following statements would the author agree with the most? Upgradation, though simple, is disruptive. He did not say upgradation is disruptive, right? That's not the point he's trying to make. He's not trying to tell upgradation is disruptive. So you can get rid of that. In the next 30 years, one's experience in upgrading will be greatly valued. Okay. Okay, I'll keep this aside. There's a reason why we'll come back to that. Upgradation is no longer an option but an obligation. Looks very much like what he said because it's given somewhere here. Because he was telling that he begrudgingly used to upgrade, right? Let's see where it is. Yeah. So if you read around here, it is given you may not. Just a minute. It is given here, you may not want to upgrade, but you must because everyone else is. I used to upgrade my gear begrudgingly, means you don't have an option, you have to upgrade, right? So upgradation is no longer an option, but an obligation. Looks like something that the author will definitely agree. When it comes to erosion, intangibles behave differently from tangibles. So he did say that intangibles also require some kind of maintenance, but when it comes to erosion, how they are going to behave and all, he did not tell anything about it. So we can get rid of this one. Now it's between 2 and 3. In the next 30 years, one's experience in upgrading will be greatly valued. Upgradation is no longer an option. Definitely this is something given, but let's look at this. One's experience in upgrading will be greatly valued. Now someone could actually argue that your experience of upgrading itself will require upgradation. Okay, that's what he is trying to tell, right? You are going to remain a newbie forever because things are going to change so much. So one could actually argue that you will not even gain experience in upgrading because that itself will require an upgradation. So the newbie point, if you remember, we are going to remain newbies forever. So you can get rid of option 2 because you would not gather more experience about upgradation because the way things upgrade also might upgrade. Okay, so the best answer we have is option 3 for this question. Type 3 if you're clear with why we're going with option 3 for this question. Perfect. Is there anyone who got all the questions right in today's session? Because I could see a good number of you getting right question after question. Type me in the chat box if you're one of those who got all the questions right.